2 games remain in the Premier League here at the World Championship Series as we're looking for the last player to advance to the playoffs. 7 have qualified, and now it's time to find the last one. To help me do that, we have In Control and Pig joining me on the desk. Group D with 2 Terrans and a Zerg trying to fight their way through. I know the Zerg stands above the rest for you. In Control.
Yep. Yeah, and he needs it. We're talking about BlizzCon all week long. It's kind of a big subject here in the StarCraft land, and Jaedong pretty much has to win convincingly here. But in order to do so, he has to get past iaguz, but then also 4GG, who also needs to win.
Yeah, so if we do see that eventual winners match, that is going to be one to explode up. But we're not there yet. We do have iaguz, a keen and eager Australian, which we'll talk about with you in a second, Pig. As let's bring up the bracket to show you where we are with Group D. We played it last night, and we saw Lil Boat go through defeating both Jaedong and 4GG, putting his mark on the Season 3 finals. And what a play he showed us, and hopefully he continue to do well over the weekend, but it's time to find out who will join him. And now it's time to talk about our series on hand. Jaedong versus iaguz. Pig, what's your first thoughts looking at this?
I mean, this is an interesting match because iaguz, he's not on the same level as Jaedong overall, but he likes his Zerg versus Terran. He's a strong TVZ player, loves to push in, and he's one of these guys who's like, you think back to the parade style of TVZ,
yep.
And most Terrans have moved away from it, and iaguz is still there, but he does it incredibly well. He surprised last season, took out TLO very convincingly 2-0, but then in the rematch went down, and that's kind of what we see a lot from iaguz is when the game ramps up, and if the Zerg player figures out I can put the pressure back on you in 3 or 4 locations, suddenly iaguz can struggle with his multitasking. And if there's ever a master of multitasking out there, it's got to be Jaedong.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can continue to look at iaguz. He's now just set up on the main stage. He's joined us now for multiple seasons in a row and continues to get better and better results gradually. He's obviously not jumping too far ahead of himself, but he's getting the results. He's slowly making his way, and he's becoming a very consistent player that we have in the Premier League, Jeff.
Yeah, he's been consistently getting here and doing fairly well. It's always interesting to hear from him. He's just kind of an interesting guy, but he's always just very very paltry about like how he views himself in the WCS. He's like, this is where I want to be, and that's good. You know, and like he's like, I want to get to the next stage, maybe. You know, like it's very interesting to ask him about. He's not. I don't know. It's like he's definitely in competition, but he would be an interesting case study for a sports psychologist. It's like, what do you think of yourself? He's like, I'm worse than everybody here. If I can make people laugh, that's good enough. It's like, whoa, what a weird answer.
And that's definitely iaguz, though. He comes in, and he's never one of these cocky players to be very cocky or blunt. He's very, he kind of undersells himself a lot. He doesn't come out with that stellar confidence, but that doesn't necessarily make him count him out because he does always come in and he does have these great builds. And even though in his first match of the round of 16 against 4GG, he came out and a lot of people said, well, he kind of got flattened, but his build order choices are always very, very intelligent and very smart. And he actually got ahead very early on against 4GG, but 4GG found a way to up the ante, and it's at those moments, if you can increase the mechanical speed of the game to the point where there's heaps of things happening at once, I think that is probably the key to defeating iaguz here for Jaedong.
And it seems like Jaedong holds that very key then, because you know the type of player that Jaedong is. He likewise joins iaguz on the main stage, and there's a lot ahead of Jaedong. He's got a lot of work to do. He comes in as ranked number 30, but he wants more than anything In Control, and you can back this up time after time after time. He wants to play at BlizzCon more than anything else.
Yeah, he comes from a tradition of not being used to not just automatically being on the absolute biggest stage and playing for the biggest prize pools against the best opponents. StarCraft 2 has been a bit of an adjustment period for him. He's no longer just, you know, 100,000% into the pro gaming life. He's become a little bit of a young man, and while he still does pro game, he is also seeing the world a little bit and kind of enjoying life outside of gaming. But at the same time, he is a fierce competitor. He's kind of famous for that death stare that he used to give in the booth because he wanted it so bad. So for him to have these obstacles in his way, you better watch out, because he's not thinking about the round of 8. He's not even thinking about the round of 4. He's thinking about BlizzCon. Those are just things that he has to achieve to get there.
players around the world, whether they be, you know, Gold League to Master League to Grandmaster to semi-professional to real professional, study Jaedong? What is it about him that really stands out above the other Zerg players that we often see play?
Jaedong historically is so fast, so mechanical, such a beast, going back to the Brood War days, but also when he made that swap over to StarCraft 2, it wasn't just his reputation which made him so famous in StarCraft 2. I mean, it was the fact that he came over and he had some of the best mechanics in the game. He was one of the first guys who actually streamed a lot at that level of mechanics. So he's one of the first players a lot of people in the Zerg scene got to watch this guy first person and just be blown away at how fast he was and how he'd always try to seek out a situation in the game where he could fight in 2 places at once, where he could fight in 3 places at once. And that's the kind of guy he is. He's always aggressive. He's always looking for every edge he can take. And going back to since when he first debuted as a pro gamer, he's not afraid to take risks. He always talks about the bluff.
Yeah, we'll see and hopefully see that come to fashion here, because he's going to need to as he goes up against iaguz, the parade pushers, we like to call them here in the WCS. Let's take a look at the map pool here. I know I made that up on the spot. I guess you called me out there, Jeff.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the 3 maps that we have in this best of 3. It's going to be Coda, Cactus Valley, and Iron Fortress. Once again, maps that we've seen time after time after time. Pig, you got some thoughts on this maps for this matchup?
No, well, iaguz picking Coda, Jaedong picking Cactus Valley, and then Iron Fortress last. I mean, what I have to see here, of course, and something we haven't talked about yet, is Cactus Valley, quite a good map for mech. Coda, a good map for mech. Iron Fortress, the last map, which I'm sure Jaedong's kind of happy with, very good for Zerg because the bases are spread out. If you want to try and pick away at the Terran, run counterattacks in, I think that's a really good map for Jaedong. But I think surviving to get there may be tricky if iaguz has a bit of mech in his hat. Because
You say that, but does he ever show
does
back?
he?
He has in the past. He hasn't done it in a while, but considering he's known this group, he's known this draw for a while, he's been preparing, and Jaedong recently has not played a lot of high-level ZVT games. If you're studying his history, you're seeing recent losses to a lot of non-Korean players using mech. I mean, not a lot, but 3 or 4 matches. And there hasn't really been any other losses. So, as iaguz, he may have spent the last few weeks actually practicing up some mech ZVT. He's been a dabbler before, but he may have dived in head first.
Is that something that that Jaedong could be anticipating here coming out of play? I mean, it is becoming more and more popular recently.
It is definitely in the meta, so in that sense, I do agree with you. I think that's something that he certainly has kind of on his radar. But kind of like we heard from Hydra, I don't think Jaedong has a whole lot of intel on iaguz specifically. Like, iaguz has been in WCS, so certainly if you look, there are some matches there, and we, you know, like you referenced, the TVZ against TLO is a nice indicator, which was pure bioplay, just very good parade push.
Yep.
But otherwise, Jaedong, he kind of, you could say, suffers as well from the same mentality as some of these guys like Hydra do, where they're like, I'm the best, I don't need to look up this guy. If I play my game, they can't keep up. That is true, but it's becoming like less and less true as these foreigners continue to get better.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Time to look at the predictions here. As, of course, of always, we've been following them throughout the week. And this is an up-to-date ranking of where we've been so far. I've gone to 56, yes. I've gone up 6%. Nathanius, though, blinking at, still at 78% in the lead. Funker fallen a little bit behind at 67. Pig, 61, not bad.
Down at 3rd, not too bad.
Jeff, you've climbed up a little bit, but you're still in last place.
Yeah, literally a whole percentage.
Yeah, 1% extra, but you're in last place.
Yeah.
Sorry about that again. Seems, I hope you can change that. You're only 5% away from Todd.
I just find it funny that Nathanius has like this prodigious rate right now, and yet he's like the least kind of gambly kind of guy out there. So right now I think there's a few people think if they can get a hold of Nate as a magic 8-ball and kind of use him to make bets on StarCraft matches, they could be into some good profit.
Well, he's got a pretty close relationship with Rotterdam, so...
Let's have a look at the lower third predictions this time to see who's chosen who to win this match. I'm interested. 8-0. Boys, a whitewash. And we've only had 1 or 2 of these this week. Everybody's on Jaedong's side.
And a couple of times we've been all completely wrong. So, I mean, it'd be a huge upset. I don't think it'd be the... it might be the biggest upset if iaguz beat him, but I don't know. We've had some... I think at elimination stage, this would be the biggest one. But we'll see. iaguz also... kind of, as you were saying, like undersells himself.
Yeah.
I don't think he gets super nervous. I mean, maybe he does. Maybe he'd tell you he absolutely does, but that might be him underselling it as well. Who knows? But he's a good TVZ player specifically. It's 08, but it's because it's Jaedong. It's not because it's iaguz, I think.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's time to get to the game now as they are ready to play, and we're ready to get the commentary underway.
Time to find out if iaguz is going to switch things up and go away from that bio play, or if we're going to have a straight-up bio TVZ, in which case I'm a little bit worried for our Australian Terran.
I would be a little bit worried as well, but he has shown us very promising things in the past when it comes to TVZ. And he's also a player that does do a lot of homework. Like we've seen him before in a couple of the previous seasons where he watches one series of his opponent and then he just spots out weaknesses. And the build order he decided to go for is not a build that he generally uses in all TVZs. No, it's a build that he thinks is going to be best against this specific opponent. And that's kind of what he needs to hope for, right, if he wants to take out this man.
It's going to be a challenge to defeat this man in the southeast position, the blue Zerg from Team Evil Geniuses. It's Jaedong.
Looking very focused, but still very calm throughout the entirety of this day. And this man, well, he's just kind of been the same man as he always is. He's happy, he's cheerful, and he tries to be funny, but he's also very good at StarCraft. It is iaguz.
Presenting Root Gaming. Root has had a pretty good year WCS-wise. You've got Hydra backing you up, iaguz with consistent performances.
Kalazur with a couple of appearances.
Yeah, it's been
Masa with a couple of appearances here and there. Absolutely very successful year for Root. When it comes to iaguz, he's also had a good year. This is the second out of 3 seasons in this year, particularly that he made it to the round of 16. And he said it in one of the interviews. He's like, round of 16 is great. I got that step now a couple of times. I want to go further. I want to see if I can push myself towards the round of 8. And that would, of course, be a massive achievement. We've already have a couple of newcomers in the round of 8 this season, Zenster, Mana as well, so perhaps we'll see one more, but needless to say, iaguz has a very, very tough road ahead of him with first Jaedong, and if he would overcome Jaedong, then of course 4GG is waiting for him.
Yeah, and that match for him yesterday, certainly not the prettiest that we've seen here in the World Championship Series. It was tough. It was tough, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why a lot of people are going to be counting out iaguz. Jaedong has a reputation for being just kind of consistent. Even if he's not at the top of his form, he's still going to show up and play a pretty good game. iaguz had a really, really hard time struggling against just mostly like 4GG's opening plays.
I'm very curious to see how Jaedong is going to play in this series, and above all, how convincing it's going to be, because it has to be convincing, right? Like, if Jaedong gets a very scrappy 2-1 victory over here, that can't possibly feel good for him going into 4GG for the next round, especially because 4GG has shown us some absolutely phenomenal TVZ in the past, and he's always been kind of an expert in that matchup, and in general plays a little bit different than the majority of the Terrans out there. So I'm not sure what to expect here, but I do hope for Jaedong at least that it's going to be very convincing and very clean.
Yeah, if Jaedong hopes to go to the global finals to qualify for BlizzCon, he needs to slaughter iaguz because the competition is very fierce. Considering, just the fact that he would have to eventually later on go through possibly Lilbo again, defeat people like Hydra, like Pult, and none of them are looking too bad so far this weekend.
No, not at all. First Reaper makes his way across the map. It's just going to be a single Reaper opening. No Reaper number 2 or 3 on the way for iaguz. 6 Lings have been produced. That's a little bit more than I think you normally make against just one Reaper. So there is a chance that Jaedong is going to try to maybe sneak them around the map, but they've already all been spotted, so that would be rather obvious. A little bit surprised to see him just open up with 6 Lings like this, Nate.
I think he just doesn't want to take any chances. If you're as confident as Jaedong against someone like iaguz, who's not really, quote-unquote, supposed to beat you, there's no need to take any unnecessarily greedy risks. Lots of Zergs have opened up with the 6 Lings. He just doesn't want to take that risk of maybe losing a drone or someone against an inferior opponent.
What do you think about iaguz opening up with that CC on the high ground? Is that just because he's only making a single Reaper?
Yeah, I'd imagine his biggest fear would be that Jaedong pulls a Violet of sorts and just throws those Lings around, tries to get the cancel on the command center, because that can be a really big play as well, and neither of these guys want to give each other too much space, both kind of respecting the possibility that either one of them could get an early advantage.
Reaper should be able to get his first Zergling kill over here, perhaps even the second one, as there's just no way for these Lings to make their way across the map and do any sorts of economic damage, at least right now. 5 more drones on the way, speed is about to finish up. How do you think iaguz is going to follow this up? Perhaps taking a small note out of Pult's playbook with a few Marines and a medevac and 4 to 6 Hellions?
Yeah, that's the impression that I'm getting, because he's still building Marines off of his barracks. There's no tech lab, which means he can't go for super fast stim. He can't go for any Marauders. He also cannot go Banshee. So going for this Marine play, maybe we'll have that Hellion Marine elevator. Could also throw an Armory, do the Marine drop with Hellion run by. mines, though.
Yeah, that's surprising.
This has actually been popping up more and more. You know, I was looking over at some of the more recent games in the Korean leagues, and I know iaguz watches a lot of those SSL. I think it was it TY versus Beyond. It was like really interesting. A lot of Koreans have started to do this, where they go for these mine drops, and normally you wouldn't think it's as good versus Zerg, but it's been proving pretty effective. Even with the queens being there, the reaction time still has to be on point.
Command Center number 3 is going down as well in the natural of iaguz. It's going to be rather tricky for Jaedong to spot, unless he somehow runs up with Lynx, but doesn't have an Overlord anymore. Over here, doesn't actually have an Overlord anywhere nearby, as Funka is showing us. He might be expecting it. Of course, this is not a crazy play, but it's one of these things that you would like to confirm as a Zerg player, and that's going to be rather difficult for Jaedong right now.
Yeah, the biggest thing about these sorts of plays is that you're not guaranteed by building units that can deal with it to 100% deal with it. I mean, as a Protoss player, Roddy, I'm sure you know that just because you have an Observer and 2 Stalkers doesn't mean those mines won't still hit half your worker line.
Absolutely. He has no idea that this medevac is making his way across the map as well. There is one Overseer being morphed right now. I'm not sure if that's an Overlord on the left side of the map. Let's take a look. Yes, it is that Overlord on the left side of the map.
Completely out of place to defend this.
So there's going to be absolutely no detection here. And of course, you know, it's not as deadly as against probes, but 2 mines can still seriously wreck a drone line over here by Jaedong. So he's going to have to be very on the money. Does get the surround up on this heli, and iaguz was not paying attention there. Ends up losing 1 heli immediately. But let's see how much these mines will do. Let's see if he's going to use any sort of focus fire with his mines as well. Jaedong realizing immediately, like, I got to pull my drones, man.
Yeah, he's still not mining off of his base as long as this is happening, and I'm sure he'll try to move that medevac towards the natural, possibly with the Marines once Zerglings show up to defend against this. You'd love to bait those Lings into the mine, but so far, so good. We can see from iaguz's perspective, okay, he's just going to set himself up. He's got an eBay finishing. Just notice, actually, that he missed one of his engineering base, so his +1 armor will be a little late, but just kind of focusing now on getting his situated 3rd base, but he still has that medevac drop.
Yep, that mine killed 2 drones, by the way, during all this. For the people who wonder, he's going to try to get a shot off as well in the natural, but that's not going to work, as Jaedong has a Lynx and an Overseer in place there. So overall, not the most successful harass, but it also wasn't disastrous, especially because iaguz has 3 CCs.
Yeah, and now the Mutalisks are coming out, which will help to swat this away. Those Hellions that are out of the map will also find themselves being mostly useless at this point. You want to wait for the Armory, which is still quite a ways off based on this opening, before you can go for Hellbats.
I know you mentioned this very often, Nate, when you both play and cast. Even though the Hellions in this particular phase don't have a whole lot of purpose anymore, you don't want to lose them, because that first fight, when you have Marines, when you have Marauders, and you morph these Hellions into Hellbats, they will often do the job of either killing a few Banelings or soaking up a couple of Banelings.
The Hellions are one of them, you know, the early game Hellions are among the most important units you make in a game versus Zerg, and it sounds really crazy to put that much emphasis on it, but if you lose them early on, then you have to worry about the possibility of Jaedong just throwing down a bunch of Banelings and making a big push to kill you, where the Mutalisks don't always have that opportunity to get in, but the Zerglings certainly can. And we can see from Jaedong's perspective, just trying to be active out on the map, he's delaying the mining on this 3rd base and just doing a lot of damage. There's not many Marines.
Nope, he's getting those Marines, he's getting a medevac as well, getting a couple of SCVs over here, and Jaedong kind of needs that as well, because his evolution chambers are very late, so you want to be able to at least do something with these quick Mutalisks. He has so many active creep tubers, by the way. It's very important for iaguz that he starts getting on top of that as soon as he has Stim and he has a couple of medevacs. Otherwise, this is going to spiral out of control very quickly. Look at the amount of tumors that's going down.
Yeah, all this tech and 6 queens on the map for Jaedong really allows him to push that creep spread forward, and his screen moves around so fast.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say, I'm getting dizzy over here, Nate. Can we please swap out of first person? Just kidding. It's awesome, of course, to see this of Jaedong with holy hell. How do you play StarCraft like this, man? I like to take my time, you know. I play Protoss, I have one control group, and every now and then I look around the map, and that's about it.
Sometimes press the A key.
Yeah, sometimes you hit F2, you know, all the beautiful things alive. You put a unit on patrol here and there.
And baiting all these Marines around, forcing out those stims, just trying to be as annoying as possible as Jaedong. The only advantage iaguz has is his 1-1's done, so he has that slight upgrade lead for a short period of time. However, I do not believe... Okay, he actually does have an armory, so he can go right into 2-2 as well.
These Mutalisks are going to start working on it, though. He's going to have to worry about these engineering bases, because one of them is not in range of that missile turret. So if he doesn't leave any Marines behind in the later stage of the game, that could become tricky if this Muta count keeps climbing, which it does for now. There's already 12 Mutalisks on the map. If he gets like 15 Mutalisks and all the Marines are out of position, it's very easy to snipe an eBay. And we've seen that before in this tournament. If you lose one of those eBays, or you lose an armor even, that happened as well, it becomes very hard for Terran to stay up to par with the Zerg upgrades.
A big moment here as Baneling speeds done, but there are no Banelings on the map. If iaguz wants to put pressure on, he has to go through all this creep, and stepping onto creep is very dangerous. So Jaedong's going to have a slightly lower number of Banelings than normal because he has
Widow
these...
Mines!
Ooh, yeah, the mines actually do soften up quite a few of those mutas, but there's not a crazy amount of Banelings if he can split his forces properly.
Here we do already see that the creep spread is making this so much more difficult for
Yeah, this
iaguz.
is nightmarish.
Yeah, it's everywhere, man. iaguz is really going to have to save up some scans and clean this out, because this cannot keep going like this, and at a certain point it just becomes impossible for iaguz. Even if he wins a fight on creep, he's never going to be able to just march across the map. Here we do see these Hellions that have been morphed into Hellbats. This is going to be that very important first fight, but often, you know, it's kind of a dance. Can the Zerg player defend his fourth hatchery for the first time or not? And it just seems like Jaedong is having a very easy time keeping that fourth hatchery alive and getting it up. Even though he's losing a couple of creep tumors here and there, just getting that fourth hatch up and running is already phenomenal for a Zerg.
One of the most important moments here in Terran versus Zerg is you make this push out, you want to deny the fourth base, but instead you kill like a dozen creep tumors, and that's the problem. Is Jaedong pushed that creep so far, you can't just run past the creep because that's how those Banelings crush your Marines.
And there were so many tumors that it's not even just one scan cleans it all up. He still has a couple of active tumors over here in the middle of the map, and he's going to renew the tumors that he's lost. This is becoming a real problem for iaguz. He will throw down a scan, so he takes care of those tumors as well, but the tumors on the high ground have already been renewed. And even though there hasn't really been a whole lot of you know, big skirmishes, big battles yet, no big trades back and forth, I think that Jaedong is very happy with this game so far.
Yeah.
This might be the moment. Within the next 10 seconds, he's going to have 2-2 Marine Marauders against 1-1 of Jaedong. Jaedong has Banelings, but he doesn't have an overwhelming amount of Banelings. I feel kind of this is the moment right now where iaguz has to make a play happen, right?
Yeah, he has to do something right here, right now, because letting Jaedong just get up that fourth base unabated when iaguz has no fourth command center, his economy is going to spiral out of control.
Yep, he's going to have to do something. 13 more Banelings are being morphed right now. It's going to bring the Baneling count up in the 30s. Whoa, Jaedong
That's
with
one thing to do.
Oh my god, that was a very big and very uncharacteristic mistake. I think he lost 6-7 Mutalisk over there.
Yeah, he still has a lot of Zergling Baneling. I mean, moves like that are going to help iaguz. He actually killed a lot of Overlords too, so he can't build any more Zerglings or Banelings at the moment. The first few forces do step out. He pre-stims.
This is pretty damn good so far for iaguz. I'm a little bit worried now that he never started +3 attack. He even started armor before attack, which is something that I don't think you ever want to do as a Terran. Oh, those are very good Baneling connections though.
Yeah, he's cleaned up the majority of these forces. iaguz was able to get some work done there, but he's not able to hurt the economy of Jaedong, and he's sitting comfortably at 80 drones, just pumping out Mutalisks and Banelings. You know, that big damage he did to those mutas was nice, but his army is just not where it needs to be to handle this.
The follow-up wasn't good enough. Those Banelings got better connections than
And there's creep.
Yep, yeah, and there is creep as well, and still no +3 attack on the way for iaguz, like Funka showed us as well twice already. This is becoming a problem, especially right now as Jaedong is gonna finish up his 2-2 upgrades. He's gonna be evening up in that department, and he has more money, more units, and he has a lot of creep all around the map. He's gonna try to trigger a couple of these mines. Mines do get a pretty good shot off for now, but Jaedong has done an absolutely great job in every single time after he lost his tumors to just renew them immediately. You know, spreading creep when your opponent is not doing anything is cool, but doing it when your opponent is trying to deny it, that's a lot harder.
Yeah, and he's just going to surround this army, completely swarming over iaguz's forces, hitting from the east, hitting from the west, and just annihilating everything. The Mutalisks can go after the medevacs now. These forces are trying to retreat. The Widow Mines get a few detonations, but it's not going to be enough. Roddy iaguz dwindling in supply as Jaedong continues to pounce forward.
That was a massacre in the middle of the map. There are still a couple of mines left over here, but army supply, Jaedong is taking 30-40 supply lead. This is sometimes that moment where Zergs get a little overeager and they actually start attacking in moments they maybe shouldn't attack and should just kind of recollect themselves. That's a good mine shot. I do think that iaguz might be able to stabilize over here, but he's going to lose a couple of production facilities. He's probably going to end up losing quite a bit of economy, and he's actually quite far away from stabilizing right now.
Yeah, and he lost the fourth command center, and I think at that point there's no way to recover. He doesn't have the income necessary because that main base won't last forever. He's going to push in as far as he possibly can. The Widow Mines are there to kill some of these Zerglings, but the Mutas are knocking down the wall. More and more Zerglings streaming across the map. He's building 10 more Mutas right now. They're going to help add into this. GG Jaedong takes game number 1 against iaguz.
Even in those final moments, Jaedong still taking care of his links, making sure that those two mines didn't get the dream shots off, and that looked very convincing, man, especially on a map like Coda, which is such a straightforward map. It must feel so good for Jaedong knowing that, like, all right, you know, that was good, that was solid. Just more of where that came from, and I should be able to get ready for that final series against 4GG.
Yeah, just very crisp, clean play, dealt with that early pressure that iaguz brought without really any trouble whatsoever. But yeah, just a solid performance.
Where do you think it went wrong for iaguz? Was it just that moment where he had those 2-2 upgrades and he wasn't able to put on any real pressure? Was it the opening with the Widow Mines?
I mean, the opening slowed him down quite a bit. He didn't really get the damage done that I think as a Terran player you want, because otherwise you just want to be super greedy. But he just wasn't able to do anything because his Hellions were so late. He couldn't deny the creep spread, and then he couldn't push him, and that's where Jaedong got a really big advantage from it. He wanted to tune up that opening a bit better, moving into map number 2. We're going to have a very short break before we get into the next map, though, so we'll be right back. You're watching the World Championship Series. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the World Championship Series Premier League round of 16. iaguz just got smacked back by Jaedong in that last map. Roddy wasn't too pretty.
Nope, pretty much never really got things going in his way. The first Reaper, well, you don't really expect too much of it, but then the follow-up with the Mines and with the Hellions, you kind of hope to achieve something, you know, at least 5, 6, 7 drone kills, that would be great. Or maybe a Queen or 2, but it was just never like that. And Jaedong, absolutely phenomenal how active he was with his Queens, kept renewing the Tumas as well every single time he lost it. And you mentioned it, that 4th hatchery is often a critical point in this matchup, and it was never contested. It went completely uncontested. Jaedong saturated it, never had to worry about a drop. It's going to have to be better in game number 2 for iaguz. The man from down under, as we are loading in to Cactus Valley. Nate, what are the chances here that iaguz is going to do something that Paul showed us, for instance, in his game 3 against Elaser? Some crazy double factory, you know, super all-in build, to say the least.
I think if I asked iaguz about a build like that, he would tell me it's just silly, Roddy. This guy doesn't deviate too much as we get into map number 2. And I think that's going to actually make things a bit rough versus this man in the Southeast who's currently up 1-0. Evil Geniuses, Jaedong. He's just so stubborn.
And on the right top side, we're looking at a man who has made it to the round of 16 twice already this year. He wants to go to the round of 8. He's representing Root Gaming. It is iaguz. It would be such a great step in his career though, because he's always been a Terran. You know, he's been around for so long. This is something that people often forget, because iaguz is a name that only started popping up more in 2014 and 2015 when he first joined WCS America and later just WCS Premier League. But even in 2011, iaguz has made appearances at Intel Extreme Masters and stuff. But back then, he was just another player that was only there because, you know, he represented Australia or it was near Australia. Right now, he's actually pretty damn good in StarCraft, and making it to the round of 8, that would be a huge accomplishment, but safe to say that he didn't get very lucky with the group drawing.
No, I mean, this was just a little bit one of the rougher ones. You know, you're definitely have to consider you're up against like the TVT expert of 4GG, and then probably the strongest Protoss in this tournament in Lilbo. But Jaedong is also no one to scoff at, and that's, I mean, it just goes to show how hard this group is that Jaedong is in the elimination match.
Cool to see over here. iaguz is going to go command center first on the low ground. Not too worried about anything over here. Jaedong is going to scout this immediately. Could have perhaps hide his Overlord to show iaguz, like, I know what you're doing. You don't know yet where I'm spawning. But Jaedong doesn't really care all that much. So he's just moving further forward with his Overlord.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable.
Wow, it's going to be double hatch. Nice.
Yeah, I think if you see the command center first this early, you're like, yeah, okay, just double hatch for pool. No big deal. There's nothing iaguz can do to punish it.
Do you think iaguz is aware of this right now? Is he expecting this? It's like, okay, my opponent saw this very quick because his Overlord went in the right direction.
I mean, if iaguz has done any studying up on Jaedong, one of the things that makes Jaedong such a threat and such a good player is that he will pounce on players that play greedily like this sometimes. And he could very well have gone for a hatch first into pool with gas and maybe thinking about doing like a big aggressive speedling push. And I've seen him do that, you know, and I've had the pleasure of getting wrecked by that as well. And that's the thing that makes you so good though, is you can't be 100% certain that he's going to play in a certain way, and that allows Jaedong to pretty safely get away with this.
Kind of jealous you recently played against Jaedong, Nate.
Yeah, while he was getting ready to qualify for WCS. It was painful. It was very painful.
It's a great run. It's the effort that counts, Nate. You can just tell.
Okay, guys, see how many things my SCVs can kill.
You can just tell everyone that it was a very close series.
Yeah, very close, very close, passionate 8 minutes. maybe 5 minutes real time.
Bunker is going to go down here as well. So iaguz did spot both hatcheries, and that's of course very important. The SCV didn't actually go into the main base, so he has no idea about any extractors that may or may not have gone down. Sometimes the Zerg will drop that hatchery, but still get a pretty quick gas in the main base and then just try to catch the Terran off guard in that way, because obviously if iaguz scouts the natural and he scouts that third hatchery, he's like, okay, this is going to be a very slow and steady game, you know, this is going to be a very macro-oriented opening, and it could be good for Zerg to just switch it up then, but Jaedong is probably not going to do anything too weird over here, because his mechanics, Nate, if there's one thing I take away from that previous game, is that Jaedong looked very clean, man. He was very active with all of his units. His multitasking was on par.
And his creep spread was phenomenal.
Yep, and the injects were good. The way he was spending his money was good. The upgrades, you know, they were spot on. The only thing that was there to criticize him on was that small misclick with the Mutalisk, where he, you know, hovered a bunch of Mutalisk above 20 Marines. That's not something you can do.
Well, when you can throw that many Mutalisks away and still win, I think that just shows more so how well Jaedong was controlling the tempo of that map.
Absolutely, yeah, he was dictating the pace of the game from start to finish pretty much. And that's of course something that you're looking for as well in Cactus Valley. Yeah.
This is so interesting, because this can actually kind of mess with your opponent's head too. iaguz may be thinking to himself, I'm going to play bio, push this Overlord away with the barracks, and if you were going mech, you would just keep this barracks floating. But now Jaedong's like, why? What is he doing with his barracks? He's not building Marines or going for stims, so it must be some sort of starport play.
Very quick armory going down.
Yeah, this is actually a ridiculously fast army. This is giving me some rough vibes for someone that plays NA ladder as much as iaguz has. And I'm not gonna lie, this Roach Warren is very smart from Jaedong, because he has to know it must be a starport factory play, simply because the barracks isn't doing anything.
It's nice to kill an Overlord like that, but of course you're kind of giving a lot of opponent or information to your opponent as well when you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, he could have also, it's also possible that it might have been like one of those crazy builds that you mentioned, like a double factory play, but the Roach Horn handles both of those pretty well.
Yep.
Especially since he didn't get speed.
And let's not forget that the way that Jaedong opened up in this game, it is very economic. So dropping a building like a Roach Warren, even if he doesn't end up using it or doesn't make a whole lot of roaches, that doesn't set him that far back, as long as he keeps all the drones alive that he's been put pushing out so far. He's making 6 roaches immediately, though, Nate.
6 is the peak number, I'd say, defensively speaking. The fact that he's getting Zergling speed throws me off a little bit, because it almost looked like this could have just been like one of those roach 1-1 timing pushes.
Exactly. Look at the amount of overlords that he just queued up. He queued up 4 overlords while he had quite a bit of free supply. He's making 5 drones now, but maybe after these drones he's going to make a few more roaches. I believe the roaches are a tiny bit out of position. Here come the first Hellions. Jaedong, where are your roaches? They seem to be a little bit out of position. I'm surprised that there wasn't a single roach in the main base, Nate.
Yeah, this is a pretty tricky. These Hellions landed inside of the main base, built an evolution chamber to block the movement pathing of those forces, but aside from that, we can see from Jaedong's perspective, he's flying all over the place. He has no trouble splitting his attention between multiple conflicts at once.
Kind of insane to see that medevac made it across the map undetected. If you look at the minimap of Jaedong, he has quite a bit of map vision and has multiple overlords spread up all over the place as well. In the end, he didn't really lose a whole lot there. Lost a few drones, lost a little bit of mining time, but that is about it.
And as we look forward in this series, we check everything out, it's completely defensive, the purpose of those roaches. We didn't see, you know, there were Baneling nests, but we also didn't see the range upgrade, and he didn't make more than 6. So as he goes to lair, that was more the, in case you're actually all-inning me, I want to make sure 100% I'm not going to die.
These Hellions are going to try to go for glory one more time. The roaches again a little bit out of position, so here we go. Once again, a lot of these drones being evacuated towards the natural. Line them up. Oh my god, he could get a very juicy shot up there, but the roaches are here to save the day. Still though, even something like that, and he has roaches as well in the third base, and this is going to be very nice for iaguz. Already got 6 drones, he's getting 7 more. Man, this has been great.
Yeah, I mean, he's got so many Hellions on the map, picking off 10 workers in this position, now getting even just a couple more to finish things off. iaguz, it's a nice thing to be able to do in this position. He ties the worker count up, but Jaedong is just spamming out drones right now. He knows that beyond the phase of Hellions being on the map, it'll be a long time before there's any other type of push, simply because you don't have stim yet if you get this much, and this Hellbat drop is like the last-ditch throw he'll be able to make.
He knows about that Spore Crawler, so he has to avoid it at all costs. He will unload only a single Hellbat, because that Spore did shoot in time. So these 2 Hellions, they didn't really get anything done.
Now Jaedong's got to be feeling really good. This third base, trying to take that without Hellions is always risky. The only thing that he's been very greedy on was his Baneling nest, but he never faced a large enough force at one time that he needed it.
A siege tank is on the way, Nate. Is iaguz worried about?
I think he's worried about the roaches. I think if I was iaguz, I would consider the possibility that Jaedong could have been going for a 1-1 roach timing, or at least a 1-1 roach complement to come with this, or even go for a crazy Baneling push with roaches and lings off 3 bases, which for double hash before pull is actually quite scary to deal with.
What I'm just worried about right now, Nate, is the state of the game that iaguz is currently in. If you just take a look at iaguz's vision, he sees absolutely nothing. He had 1 Marine outside of his main base, and that one just got picked off as well. Jaedong doing such a phenomenal job in making sure his opponent has absolutely no eyes on the map, and that makes playing StarCraft so much more difficult.
Yeah, that's the worst part about playing against someone this good is you know that as soon as you're behind, you're like, well, I have my work cut out for me. He's not going to accidentally stop creep spreading or stop injecting and, you know, tunnel vision on a little bit of cute micros. Like, no, you're playing versus Jaedong. You've let you've let him enter his zone, and now you're in trouble.
These Marines do find 1 Overlord, will be able to pick that one up, but look at the amount of free supply that Jaedong has. I do kind of like that. Like, it's not maybe the most efficient way, but if you have a little bit of time for yourself and if you have time to get those units out, just make all those Overlords and make sure you don't hit a horrible supply block at 140 when you truly need those extra units. Just squeeze those Overlords out a little bit quicker when you're this rich, when you have 84 drones, why not?
Yeah, I actually completely agree. I think it's a very smart way to handle this, and he has the resources slowly but surely to get closer to that max out. Lings are going to surround these Marines. They do not have combat shield, and look at this. Just look how quickly Jaedong re-queues more creep tumors at the end. Like, he is 100% focused on maintaining every aspect of his macro game and his micro game.
I mean, that's one of the absolute most important things in ZVT in general. We saw it at Coda as well. A couple of times iaguz tried to clean up creep, and then he was forced to take a big fight. And then yes, the tumors are gone, but the creep is still there. And if all those Lings and Banelings roll in on that moment, it's still going to be borderline impossible to get a favorable trade for you if you're Terran.
And there's one other key difference in this map compared to the last one. That's Jaedong is actually ahead in upgrades this time. His 2-2 is finishing before iaguz's, and you know, all credit to iaguz. He had faster upgrades last game, but he still wasn't able to win a straight-up engagement.
Nope, he's going to throw down a scan. I must say, the only thing that's good for him is that there isn't that much creep threat over here on the right side, which is perhaps the most important phase for Jaedong. He has a lot of creep threat in the middle, but iaguz is not going to attack via the middle. And he has a lot of army, man. Look at the army supply for iaguz, 123. This is a very big push. If only he was even in upgrades or even ahead in upgrades, this would have been a devastating push. But even right now, with tanks and with Widow Mines, this is a very nice setup. Baneling's coming in from the north. He's hitting from the north and the south.
Yeah, he's hitting in every possible direction, and having the siege tanks help anchor this is actually quite nice. He's finished off all of the Banelings. There's still 11 finishing up right now, but those Mutas are looking to make a play. A couple of the Banelings are actually across the map, and Jaedong actually moved them all the way home rather than trying to harass them. But these Banelings should be the big impact makers. They actually hit the Thor, so the Marines are still alive for the most part. There's a tank on the low ground. There's still some Widow Mines shooting, and Jaedong, you gotta clean up these Marines.
There's just so much Zerg, though, Nate. Like, even though those Banelings did indeed connect with the Thor, in the end, there is so much Zerg. Jaedong has been so rich. He has so many reinforcements queued up all the time, and he's gonna chase down this army, and he's fighting off creep right now. That Widow Mine is not going to go off. This Thor is in a lot of trouble, and this just went disastrous. The setup looked good for iaguz, but in the end, there was just so much Zerg.
Yeah, Jaedong just
and look at the upgrades.
really bounced. He bounced so well off of his opening, and trying to win that fight behind on upgrades just isn't going to happen. Jaedong once again flooding into the natural of iaguz. He wants to go up to the deciding match of this group. He is not going to be eliminated here. Not here, not right now. Jaedong moves towards closer and closer to the main base, and just waiting for that next wave of reinforcements, I'd imagine now.
iaguz had another good season in WCS, making it to the round of 16 twice in 1 year, something you can be very proud of, but unfortunately his run is going to end right here and right now as Jaedong just looked unstoppable in this series. He's going to pick up this Thor. iaguz is going to try to stabilize Nate, but on this moment as a Terran player, you know it's the beginning of the end. When the wall has been broken in the natural, when you lose all your SCVs, you know there will be a true swarm waiting for you.
Yeah, trying to stabilize the production is all you can do, but unless all these Banelings accidentally kill themselves, that's not going to happen. The Marauders are blocking up front. Widow Mine picks off a lot of those Banelings, but iaguz dips below 100 supply. The Banelings knock out all the income at the third, and GG's called. Jaedong eliminates iaguz and will stay alive here in Group D of the World Championship Series, round of 16.
He looked so good in that series. I loved everything about it. Not just the clean victory, but also the way that his mechanics showed off in that series.
Yeah, really just non-stop, solid, macro, amazing.
Yeah, fantastic play from Jaedong there, Pig. Looked flawless.
It was just dominating play. He got momentum. He ran with it. I mean, that was just flawless play. iaguz having to deal with a very hard situation. You know, he went in there and maybe that lack of confidence showing a little bit, but especially in that second game, getting a little bit unlucky with, of course, his command center first being scouted immediately. And Jaedong, he gets that little bit of information. He says, "Oh, I know how to react to this," and his economy was flawless from there. He built up into a massive, overpowering ball.
And that's the Jaedong we all really wanted to see coming into today's games.
Yeah, I think from tournament to tournament, there's definitely a bit of a fatigue that can take over Jaedong, and all of a sudden he doesn't look nearly as sharp. But this WCS, he's coming to kick some butt, and he looks good.
I mean, is that the type of game we're expecting him to see also deliver against 4GG? Obviously, 4GG is meant to be the stronger opponent here. It is another level ahead. Do you think that Jaedong can do it again?
If you're a Jaedong fan, Sean, you're hoping so, because 4GG is chaos embodied, man. That last series with him against Lilbo was some of the most exciting StarCraft we had in the last few days. But nobody, I don't think, would say, 4GG is the cleanest and most meticulous executor. But what he is he is a micro monster, and the game devolves chaotically. So Jaedong has always said he's comfortable there and likes it. So I'm really excited about this upcoming match.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. Let's check in with the bracket. And as you can see, we have a first place finisher already from Group D, which leaves us with one final game for the entire of the round of 16. One final match, 4GG versus Jaedong. Pig, we talked a lot about both of these players coming into the round of 16 in a very difficult group, and with Lilbo advancing in first place, both 4GG and Jaedong are playing, along with Lilbo actually, for a spot at the global finals, but one of them will be eliminated now. This is a huge game for both.
The round of 8 just wouldn't look the same without either of these names being eliminated, but one of them has to go coming up, and it's going to be such a hard match to call. 4GG, I mean, the way their styles match up, he's been looking great lately, but Jaedong is a monster. He's got that drive. He's got that competitive edge lately, and I honestly could not even bet either side. This is going to be a real match to watch for.
Yeah, it should be an excellent treat for us all to round the round of 16 up, Jeff.
Sorry, my joke making calculus started entering. I would tease you about that, but you already teased yourself, so we're covered bases there. Yeah, we're going to close out with this final match, and what a one to do it. I like how you set it up, though. Both these guys want to go to BlizzCon. I mean, again, 4GG has said he's got other things to do with his life after this year, and he's perhaps going to leave pro gaming behind, at least for now. That's a big deal. This guy's been winning championships all the way back to Brood War and was the Pretender, was his nickname coming into StarCraft 2, and getting it done he was like one of the coolest players to make the crossover. He's one of the early ones, and we were all like, who is this guy who is tearing it up? So it's going to be kind of sad to see him go, and it would be weird to see him go here. There's a little bit of a legend there. So does he disrupt the pattern and stop Jaedong from going to BlizzCon, or does he retire here?
Yeah, it's going to be one to watch, and you definitely don't want to be missing this one. Do make sure to check out Twitter and hashtag the WCS and join in the conversation, because this one's going to be a blast. Which player's going through, which one sadly is being eliminated.